Today I want to kind of give a quick response to Mark Drysdale. He is an evolutionist who was arguing or debating Kent Hovind, and he had a lot of problems with the canopy theory, that it shouldn't be taught to children, meanwhile, they teach kids they're not a boy or a girl and then try to, convince them to castrate themselves. But, anyhow, yeah, I want to kind of focus on why this is pretty well, obviously not a big deal, okay? We see canopies like Uranus, Saturn, several planets have canopies. Venus, right next door to us, has a canopy, okay? So, that's really not, is there a magical, it's like, no, Venus is not magical, okay? So, basically, let's go over some of these ideas and stuff. First of all, you have to understand historical science. He's going by this methodology of yesterday was the same as today, and everything's been hunky-dory, for no reason, Well, let's kind of go over some things. Number one, we have to go by history instead of, trying to figure out history, okay? Instead of calculating history, sometimes we have to first go by observation, okay? Go by observation of history, then you'll start, seeing the ancient world and what he has to say. But on this issue of the canopy, most of the ancient world all agreed that there was a canopy. And they started questioning that somewhere, within a couple hundred years of the time of Christ. Basically, the theory is that there was a canopy and then it got wounded in the Great Flood and then eventually was gone, after a couple thousand years. So, basically, the Egyptians, okay, they believe in the canopy. Them and the Babylonians, okay, they both did, and they were mathematical geniuses, okay. They had a lot of arithmetic, and of course the Egyptians made the Great Pyramids, which have lasted thousands of years. And to have such giant mountains of buildings perfectly aligned, you have to have a knowledge of the earth and mathematics, and they even had theirs with magnetic poles, so they definitely knew enough engineering to kind of deal with that. Yes, they were, flat earthers, but that's because they didn't travel the world, okay? So, from their area, they could know, is there something above us, especially if they're making a gigantic building. Okay, next thing is that what we can deduce from science is that we have reason to believe that the environment was different. Why is that? Well, we found ancient amber and we found ancient ice cores. And in these ancient ice cores and ancient amber, the air pressure was much greater and the oxygen level was much greater than what we have today. And so there is a little alternation in the environment. Also from the fossils. The giant pterodactyl, it could not fly in today's environment. Okay, it's too heavy a beast to fly, and yet it was made for flying. So it seems that there must have been more air pressure at that time. We found some ancient reptiles, Titanoboa, and a giant turtle. And these animals are cold-blooded. And because they're cold-blooded, because all they are is big reptiles that we have today. So basically, there needs to be enough heat to keep them alive for them to survive, to be that size. Well, let's go back, and you have dinosaurs all over the earth, even up north. Okay, so it seems like those dinosaurs, if we can have Titanoboa, and those dinosaurs are also cold-blooded, not birds. Okay, not warm-blooded birds, but these were also reptiles, and they were cold-blooded. So you'd need a warmer environment all over the earth. You need heat, you need air pressure. Okay, and so we have a historical observation. And historical observations are not as accurate as scientific observations, but They are observed, and modern science cannot observe the past. We can't go back in Doc Brown's time machine and do measurements then. We're doing measurements now and guessing. So we have more certainty that there was something, okay? Now, do we have any evidence of the canopy or ice? Remember, he argues against Canova, and he says, "Oh, if you got 2 inches or 3 inches of ice, how could the be up there?" Well, you go to Antarctica, and there are giant space clouds, electric blue space clouds that are over Antarctica. This is things that NASA has observed, and so you can just Google NASA and space clouds, or use Bing or Ask or whatever, But basically, you can look that up, and they have observed gigantic icy space clouds over or under Antarctica, okay? So we know that a physical object can exist. It's not a big surprise when you think of the vacuum of space and you think of the substance of water when it comes to air, okay? But Ken Hovind's model is not the best model of the canopy. Why is that? Because he based his off the science of Walt Brown. He was trying to keep the canopy inside Walt Brown's framework. Walt Brown does not believe in the canopy. Okay? So that was a risky choice for him to do. Check out this one, Origins, okay, by Dr. Troy Lawrence. Basically, this is a really good presentation right here. And it talks about the other factors. That there was a greater global spin. The centripetal or centrifugal forces that are keeping up, just like air in the tires of a car. If you got a leak in your tire, you can keep on driving because it's cycling, and so the physics of it keeps it going for a little while, even though there's a leak in it. This is the same principle, okay? So you got that global spin kind of keeping things up, and then you have other factors. The water in his canopy is actually much greater, okay? We're talking about the global ice caps and things like that. So a huge, massive amount. You're thinking, oh no, how is that going to work? Well, let me tell you how it works. Once you take all that water off the Earth, then the weight of the Earth is less, and the mass is what brings out the gravity. So the gravity lowers. Meanwhile, a canopy keeps more air pressure. Meanwhile, you have the vacuum of space. Meanwhile, we do have the Earth's electromagnetic field, which is much greater. And so that is having, like, the hydrogen flows to the top because it's the lightest element. And so it's coming up there, and it's starting to freeze. The water that came from there, Troy Lawrence says there was probably salt water, as we see in our oceans. And so the salt is keeping things broken up so they can slush around as they're heated by the sun and going back in the freezing from the vacuum of space, and they're slushing around and spinning around. And so basically, this is keeping that afloat. All these other factors are keeping it afloat. And so that will hug the air that gives us that ancient environment. And the greater electromagnetic field is also pushing up against it. The electromagnetic field, by the way, is not only coming from the Earth, but it's also connecting to the rest of space. If you understand the amount of electromagnetic energy that is permeating all of space, and that kind of, you want to check out something called the electric universe. But I will catch you later.